Thank you, Paul. All right, let's be honest. Do you care about Autism Cares? Really? How many of you really even know what Autism Cares is? Many of you do because it funds the work that you do, right? But I'm going to take you back just a little bit. Bear with me. This is the last presentation of the day. Let me go back. I'm going to take you back for just a minute to 2006. And I think this might have been the first time I heard the name Allison Singer. And she was part of an organization called Autism Speaks. And she had been working with many advocates at Cure Autism Now and Autism Society and others to pass legislation called the Combating Autism Act. And Allison was quoted in this Newsweek article that I read back then. And what she said was true. It really was a huge day. It had been an arduous experience to get there. I'll take you back a little bit more. For those of you who know me, you know that my home state is the great state of Texas. And at the time, I was living just outside of Dallas, and my son Jack was 2 and had just been diagnosed with autism. I had never really done any kind of advocacy at all. I won the government award in high school for best government student, but other than that, I didn't have any sort of interest in political science or anything like that. I was a certified public accountant, and my husband was too. Very sexy people. But our son Jack was diagnosed, and we had an experience that I think is similar to so many families. We received the diagnosis. We were sent on our way. At the time, our Texas Early Intervention program did an evaluation on Jack called the CARES evaluation, the Childhood Autism Rating Scale. And I think the scale was 0 to 60, if I'm remembering, and he scored a 59 out of 60. So we had heavy-duty autism on our hands, and we were so worried. We were provided with early intervention. Our early intervention was 1 hour of speech therapy per month. And we got occupational therapy once every 2 weeks, so a little better. And then every week or so, they would send a social worker to talk to me and say, "Hey, Mom, how are you doing?" And I kept saying, like, "I'm okay, but please, I'm hearing that my son needs help." So I was pulled into advocacy and became very interested at that time about what is autism. It was baffling to me as a mom to receive the diagnosis. They did an MRI, which was normal. There was no result with genetic testing, but I knew my son was really struggling. He wasn't speaking, he wasn't pointing, no joint attention, all the terminology I learned, but there were no answers. So when I heard about this legislation called the Combating Autism Act, I was all in, and I wanted to see it passed, and I wanted to try to figure out what was going on with my boy and the children of so many other people that I was connecting with. So along comes this dude named Joe Barton. Anybody remember Joe? He was in Congress for a really long time, typical Texas congressman, and he wasn't fond of the Combating Autism Act. In fact, he determined that that bill should not move. So this was really my first exposure into real autism mom advocacy. So a bunch of us went and protested. We made our little signs, and you can see, before it's too late, you have to help us. And eventually, this disc jockey named Don Imus kind of started talking about it on the radio. Anybody remember this? Oh, yes. So, very long story short, thank you for bearing with me. The bill was passed. Joe Barton crumpled, and we were able to get the bill passed. And so we were all so excited. And as Allison said, it truly was a huge day. Craig Snyder, who's not here now, but who was here earlier, he was also quoted in that Newsweek article. And he said, "This is a necessary first step." What he didn't say, that I have learned since then, it was a necessary first step up Mount Everest people, you know. And I've also learned that you cannot pole vault over Mount Everest, you just have to climb it. So that's what all of you and others of us have been doing for all these years. Okay, so what did the original 2006 bill do? So it really kind of brought together work that had been done in the past through the Children's Health Act, and it authorized research under the NIH to address the entire scope of autism. So you remember back then it was PDD, NOS, and childhood disintegrated disorder and all these other things. So it was meant to do research on the entire scope. It authorized centers of excellence for ASD, and it was supposed to increase public awareness of autism, improve the ability of healthcare providers to use evidence-based interventions, and increase early screening for autism. It's so interesting how those last activities are things that we're still talking about today. We still have work to do. It authorized almost $1 billion, but it had fewer specifics than the original draft of the bill. Compromises were made in order to get Joe Barton to actually allow the bill to move out of his committee. It's important to note, too, that the money that's authorized has to be appropriated every year, even to this day. So it's not a slam dunk. So then you have to go, of course, through reauthorization every few years. So it was reauthorized in 2011, 2014, and again in 2019. Okay, I think I'm losing you all. I need you to care. So what does that $1.3 billion, what has that been dedicated to over almost, how many years has it been now? 2006 to now. What has it done? So one is you have the Department of Health and Human Services has a national autism coordinator, and you have the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee, the IAC, and we have some IAC members. Do you want to raise your hand, IAC members that are here? I know Paul, or if you've served on the IAC, many of you have provided public comment to the IAC. They coordinate all the research and federal activity around autism. The NIH and HRSA, there are so many programs that are funded through Autism CARES. So this can affect, and likely does affect, the work that you do. So here we are today. Autism CARES is up for reauthorization again. And so through these many years, organizations like Autism Speaks, Autism Society, AUCD, they're all on the ground in Washington, D.C., and they're advocating for reauthorization, and they work very hard on appropriations. And right now, these are kind of the talking points of things that they would like to see with this reauthorization. They're looking very much for what they call in D.C. a straight reauthorization, and that means not too many changes, but we do want to try to have some discussions around increasing the number of NIH-funded autism centers of excellence, for example. So increasing the number is one thing, but I know Dr. Klim, you were talking before about centers of excellence and how, wait a minute, what's the quality or the outcomes that are coming from those centers of excellence? Those are things we need to think about. They're talking also about creating centers of excellence around things like early mortality, which is a big issue in the autism community, or what they call intense behaviors, which is another issue in the autism community. What I would ask you to think about today, we were talking before about how the language is much broader than it used to be. If you're focusing in legislation or regulation around early mortality, and you're talking about things like intense behavior, and then you're funding research related to that, what is that going to look like? Who is that going to include? So if it's premature mortality, is it going to include people that have sort of level 1 autism, who struggle with anxiety and depression, and who might be at risk for dying by suicide? That's a very important population that needs study. Or is it going to be someone who has profound autism, whose parents discovered that they didn't wake up one morning because something happened overnight and they died in their sleep, which is something that happens a great deal. Both of these issues are so important. I'm sure we would all agree. But how are we going to make progress if we don't have clarity about what the focus is supposed to be? So it's been problematic when you think about just doing a straight reauthorization and following the status quo and making sort of broad recommendations. I'm pretty worried about meaningful progress and what that might mean for our community broadly, for those with profound autism, for those who are in the middle, for those who have more level 1, different issues. But clarity, I believe, would be helpful. And when you think about it, our community has a lot to say, and if you talk to them, or if I talk to you about what Autism Cares means for you and what it should do, you know, you hear things like, here's some examples about what our families think. They talk about the burden of parents outliving their children, early intervention being so necessary. Again, Dr. Klim, I'm just gonna quote your presentation. And then you also have groups talking about help for mental health services for people with autism. So there's a lot of specifics that touch our lives that are not translating into the actual work in Washington, D.C. So when we talk about next steps and a huge day that happened back in 2006, and then we take a moment to really regroup and think about, with all this funding and all this work, what does that mean for Jack? Or what does that mean for Ryan or Sophie or whoever is on the spectrum, across the spectrum? Paul, what does that mean for you? Amy, what does that mean for you? I think clarity is going to be the thing that's going to make a difference. And so we're advocating around that in a realistic way. Forgive me for quoting Brene Brown. Some of you may be tired of hearing from Brene Brown, but I do love this quote. Clear is kind, actually. It's kind. And when you think about, I suppose, Washington, D.C., the word kind might not come to mind, but the GAO, the General Accounting Office in D.C., actually, I think, shares the same belief based on the report that they just came out with about work being done through Autism Cares. They said they could do a better job tracking progress towards goals to help agencies better allocate resources where they are most needed. So Black children who are not diagnosed in a timely fashion, having, you know, intellectual disability at, what is it, twice we can remedy that. There are things we can do through clarity in the work that is funded, rather than just maintaining the status quo, just pushing through a reauthorization, which is kind of the goal right now in DC. Another example of needed resource allocation, of course, since I'm from the Profound Autism Alliance, people with profound autism. 1 in 4 people, according to the CDC, we learned this last year at ASF, Day of Learning, have profound autism, 26.7%. You may ask, what's profound autism? Simply speaking, people who need lifetime 24/7 care who are autistic. That's what I mean when I say profound autism. That's the Judith definition. But I've run it past Kathy Lord, and she says I'm okay. So that's the group. So with 1 in 4 being qualified as having profound autism, but then research indicating that only 6% of clinical studies actually try to even include people with profound autism, what's that outcome going to look like? The lack of clarity when you're thinking about funding autism research, supports and services, if you're a young researcher, are there any young researchers in the room? And you're trying to recruit study participants, isn't it easier to just get someone who can answer a survey, right? Like, how can you include someone with profound autism who doesn't have language or has severe challenging behaviors? But they're human beings who I'm sure you care about, and they have autism. Autism cares, supposedly. So we need to find ways to make some changes. And why should you care, again, about Autism Cares? It drives research. If you're a person who doesn't care about research, there are people in our community who say, oh, research, I don't really care. I just need to get through the day. Research drives services. The services that we were able to access under health insurance laws and education and home and community-based services are all driven by research. It matters. And hey, this is where your tax dollars go. If you don't care about anything else, think about your pocketbook. Is this a good investment? So I would ask you, you can take action right now. Yes, you, I see you with your phones. If you click the QR code, you can send an email to Congress right now about Autism Cares. This particular email will talk about clarity and making sure that members of Congress really understand what autism is. They need to understand that care is a verb, and we need them to actually pass legislation that's going to change things for people with autism and their families, their communities, the people that are trying to serve them. So thank you to those who are actually going to take action. I really appreciate that. Care is a verb. As I said, please stay in touch. I'm with the Profound Autism Alliance. You can learn more about our advocacy efforts at profoundautism.org/advocacy. We have a Profound Autism Advocacy Network. We're having the Profound Autism Summit tomorrow, the inaugural Profound Autism Summit in Boston. We have people coming from 34 states, 545 people registered for an in-person conference. So we are so excited about it. If you're a researcher who wants to connect with this population, I ask you to just get in touch with me because I'd love to connect you. If you're a caregiver, please be part of this. Thank you so much for your attention today. Send your email to Congress. We need you to care.